Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Susan Rosenberg. I am the president of the League of Women Voters this year. And I just want to go over a few of the points of the forum that you are attending today. And it is the League of Women Voters' mission to promote citizen involvement in government and increase public understanding of major public policy issues. We believe that an informed citizenry is the foundation for effective government. We are nonpartisan and with respect to candidates and parties, and we only study positions on all the issues. This forum is not a debate. Candidates will take turns answering questions, first those prepared by the League of Women Voters of Richfield, and then the second round will be questions from the audience. This forum is a taped TV broadcast. It will be rebroadcast on cable TV. And so we're asking that you all be as quiet as possible. We're asking that no applause be given to any particular candidates until the end of the forum. The order of speaking has been determined. I believe they've taken numbers, and so that is how the order was determined. So, and each candidate's introductory remarks will be 1 minute. Then the league questions, there will be 90 seconds allowed. And then the candidates will have 1 minute to answer the audience questions. And then they will have a 1 minute wrap up after it's over. During the forum, members of the League of Women Voters will be handing out index cards so that you can put your questions on there. And afterwards, the league then will screen the questions. They must all be legible. There can be no personal matters here. It must be very clear, and anything that's openly hostile or antagonistic, not in this group, but will be discounted. And any questions that are submitted to make a statement instead of asking a question will not be allowed. All the questions are the property of the League of Women Voters. And always keep in mind that if your questions aren't addressed in the way that you need to them, that you can call any one of these people at any time. They're more than happy to talk to you. And in fact, they really would like to get to know your particular issues and so that they can act on them. And as you know, there's no signs here, no campaign shirts, and there is water available outside. And please turn off all your cell phones. And on a personal note, as far as League of Women Voters are concerned, I think any of you out here should join, mainly, and any of the candidates or anybody, because you can really get some good perspective on issues. Like we said, the League of Women Voters is not a partisan organization, and we study issues. And we learned a lot at PennFest just last week because we were talking trash. And what we were talking about is the garbage issue in the Twin Cities, in Richfield. And so the league really does promote issues. So take some time, join the league, get on the newsletter, email, and you'd be surprised what you could learn, and then come to a few of the meetings. Anyway, I couldn't have done what I did in public service without the league. So that's my little soapbox, and you all can join. And anyway, we're going to have a great forum. And so I will hand it to Donna. Are you the one that I need to hand it to? Oh, and by the way, candidates, you should know that Mary Supple down here in the black, she's the one who's the timekeeper. She's the one who's going to be the one you got to really pay a lot of attention to because they're the one she's got the timing going. So with that, then I'll turn to Donna Drummond, who is the questioner.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the candidates. We'll start with a 1 minute introduction of yourselves, and we'll start with Representative Slocum.
I have a point of information. Do I need to push this to get the microphone to work? How does the microphone work?
I think if it's on green, it's working.
Is it? Okay, terrific. Don't start my timing yet, because I had that clarification, and I'm sure others had that also. First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for doing this. Informed voters are smart voters, and they vote well. And so thank you. Thank you for doing this. I'm Representative Linda Slocum. I'm running for re-election to the District 50A House seat. in the legislature. District 50A includes western Richfield, central and eastern sliver of Richfield, and then east and central Bloomington. The committees I serve on in the legislature are the House Crime and Public Safety Committee, Commerce Committee, Taxes Committee, and I'm vice chair, and I'm really proud of this one, for the K-12 Education Finance Committee, because approximately half the state budget is spent on education. I'm a recently retired 8th grade social studies and English teacher. I have 2 licenses. I taught for 25 years. I taught in Minneapolis and in a couple of schools in Minneapolis. Richfield's been my home for about 20 years, a little more than 20 years. Wow, that's a quick minute. Thanks, Mary.
Then we'll move to Mr. Hortolosa.
Thank you. Thank you also to the league for inviting me, and thank you for the voters in Richfield for coming. Again, my name is Andres Horilosa, and I'm running for the State House, 63B. And I'm glad that my wife is here with me to give me some support. I met my wife while serving in the Army. I served for 20 years. And I have a background in healthcare, board certified in healthcare management. And I also have a graduate degree in computer science. And we have 1 child. And this is an amazing country. I came at 22 for graduate school. I have no idea that some 30 years later, I will have the opportunity to present myself to you, great Minnesotans, offering myself as an option for your choice for public service. Because I really believe in our institution. I serve in the Army to preserve this freedom of ours to actually vote. And I have to tell people that there is a difference between casting your vote and the actual vote. So I encourage you, no matter who you vote, please vote in this election because it improves our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Jean Wagenius. I'm a state representative representing parts of Minneapolis and parts of Richfield. And I think the mic needs to be a little closer here. I live at 4804 11th Avenue South in Minneapolis and have lived there since 1973. And our family chose to move there, so my children, I have 2 sons, could go to the Minneapolis public schools. They went to Hale, Field, Falwell, and South, and they loved the Minneapolis public schools, so I'm very supportive of them and schools in general. Before serving in the legislature, I was an attorney working for the Minnesota Court of Appeals. I was a staff attorney for the court. Right now, I am on committees in the House. I chair Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture Finance, which is a budget committee that has wide jurisdiction. I am on the Big Finance Committee, which is very important to us, and several other committees. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. My name is Dean Mumblu, and I'm the Republican candidate for the Minnesota House for District 50A. First, I'd like to take just a brief moment to thank the Richfield League of Women Voters for giving me the opportunity to express my reasons for running for political office. A little bit of background of myself. My wife and I, Margie, live in Richfield, just west of 66th and Lindale. We have 5 grown children and 1 grandchild. My first career, I was a law enforcement officer for Sherburne County Sheriff's Office. I've owned several businesses, and currently I'm the president, CEO, and one of the shareholders of Vision Bank, which is a state-chartered bank located in St. Louis Park. I'm also the holder of 2 patents. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin with our first question, and you'll have, that's for City Council. We'll start with the first question, and you will have 90 seconds to answer this question. Why are you running for office, and what will be your major priorities if elected? And we will be doing a random rotation of questions so that nobody's always going first or last. So for this question, we'll start with Ms. Wagenius.
Thank you. One can make great progress for their neighbors by serving in the legislature. And in the last 2 years, we have made particular progress for Minnesotans. We stopped the gridlock, and we moved forward on a lot of issues, including paying back the debt for the schools. It was $2.4 billion of debt. We added to the school funding. We stopped the increase in tuition at the U, so to make schools more affordable. Have the first property tax relief in decades, and I know you all know this already, but property taxes had doubled in the last decade. We've made great progress. There's a lot more to be done. Gridlock is not a good thing. Progress is what Minnesotans expect. I expect to see 2 areas where we're going to need to concentrate a lot of our attention and energy. One of them is in early childhood education. You know, we did all-day kindergarten this year for every child, free all-day kindergarten, which is a wonderful thing. But with our understanding of brain development for children, doing more earlier is in order. I think we're also going to be working on major transportation issues.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. I'm running for re-election because we are on a wonderful trajectory at this point. The last 2 years have been very productive, and by many, many people's estimation. And I want to continue to work on the issues that are coming before us. I'm concerned about preschool funding. Right now, this last session, we invested $40 million in early childhood education scholarships, which will provide 11,000 kids with scholarships. And we also invested in financial aid for college students, and we froze tuition. I'm concerned about transportation solutions. Our roads and bridges are a mess. We have fracture critical roads and bridges, and we can't have another bridge go down. And I was on the transportation committee when the bridge went down, and it's not something that should ever happen. We need to find fair, equitable solutions for transportation and a balanced budget and tax fairness, and those are my reasons for running.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblue?
Thank you. One of my main, I have several actually, but one of the most important ones that I see at the bank and in the business community is that our business climate. Minnesota ranks 47th out of the 50 states for negative business environment. We rank 44th in corporate taxes, 47th in individual taxes, 35th in sales tax, 41st in unemployment insurance, and 33rd in property taxes. We can do better. It's obvious that we have invested a lot of money into these different programs, but I think there must be some waste if all these other states are doing a better job with less. The problem that I see is that the lower income and poor people and middle class are really paying the taxes in proportionate with other people because of the fact that all of these taxes that are placed on business just pass down and are passed through to the average person. Those are one of the issues that I want to really work on because I think we can improve that. I think there's waste. I think that we need to increase and form a partnership with business so that we can increase business, which would increase jobs, which would increase revenue, new revenue, instead of just taxing the people that have survived this last 8 years of recession. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
Thank you, Donna. You know, having served, I'm sorry, it's just like a little loud. Having served for 20 years in the Army, I have become a problem solver, a skilled one. And early on, I realized that no matter how any human activity I have learned early as a process improvement officer, that perfection never arrives. So whatever we have done in the past, we can always improve. And one thing that I will be working on is two things, jobs and education, because those two are related. If you have good education, you can get good jobs. And when you have good jobs, sometimes you'll be happy paying taxes because you know what taxes does. It provides for services. Okay, so we need to work on this kind of things. What's happening even in the state of Minnesota, we have a lot of jobs, but companies cannot fill these jobs with local graduates because our education system doesn't provide for this kind of jobs. We are just behind. We're lagging behind the technology-driven economy. That's why most companies, where they go to get people to fill the jobs overseas. And there are countries like India are actually working specifically on their education system to get these kids, to get their own graduates, the citizens, work in the U.S. Doesn't make sense that we can't do that ourselves. That's it. So I'll be working on those two things.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what is your philosophy regarding the role of government, taxes, and spending? For this question, we'll start with Mr. Mumblu.
Well, I think that right now there should be a lot of scrutiny placed on making sure that we're not wasting our taxpayers' money. I think a recent audit on one agency showed that there was some things going on that were inappropriate. I think that I'm a conservative. I've worked with budgets almost all my career, and I think that Minnesotans have the right to know where all these monies are being spent and if they're being spent wisely.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius? I'm sorry, Ms. Slocum.
Thank you. The role of government, taxes, and spending. Our state government is pretty much cut to the bone. We've done the cuts. Most of our departments are very lean, and they do a fabulous job. Our public servants are generally overworked. Our public employees are overworked and underpaid. We need tax fairness, and we started to get tax fairness in the last couple years. Yes, I raised taxes on people who are making more than $250,000 a year because they were not paying their fair share. If you were making less than $250 a year, percentage-wise of your income, you paid more than someone who's making $250,000 or more. That's not right. So we worked at balancing the tax load, so that people that are making a lot of money pay a fair percentage of their income in our taxes. Taxes fund the government services. I like streets. I like public transit. Government does these things, and that's the role of government. Government is to help people, and that's its role. Taxes need to be fair. The government that we have right now at the state is lean and very effective. Are there slips? Absolutely. We're human beings. They're all human beings working for us, but we do wonderful things.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. There are things that we cannot do individually that we need to do in common. Roads, schools. We can't build a road for each of us individually. That's where we get together and do things together in common. So when you ask about the philosophy, that is the base of my philosophy for us getting together to do things in common. So what are the important things that we do? Schools, higher education, roads and bridges, protecting our natural resources, huge group of things that everybody wants us to do in common. And what's the best way to pay for it? It's the fair, income taxes are the fairest way to pay. Property taxes are not fair. And one of the things that has happened over the past 10 years, before this last 2 years, the property taxes had doubled. And you all know that. You can feel it. So we moved away from that taxing to a more fair income tax and actually did some property tax reduction. I think that is the direction for the future. That is the kind of progress I believe we should make.
Thank you. The third question is about education.
Do I get to answer that question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm
I think
off
that
on
means
my
I
chart
get
here.
double the time,
Yes.
right?
I apologize, Mr. Hortolosa.
Thank you. The debate about the role of government and taxing and tax rate will continue to be debated in the coming years, especially when resources are getting scarce. 30,000 Americans are becoming 90-year-olds every day now. And in 2050, it's projected that we will have a population in the entire world for about 90 billion. 9 billion people. And water will be an issue, even in Minnesota. So for me, the role of government is to provide for safety, to protect, and to preserve order. Because if you have anarchy, if you don't have order, you have a problem in your hands. And to provide an environment where anyone can actually pursue something without encumbered by a lot of burdensome requirements, where we can say, I have this idea, how do I pursue and bring this to fruition that will benefit the entire state? So instead of debating and coming up with solutions off our philosophical frameworks, I'm offering winsome ideas that actually solve problems. Because in the Army, I have become, like I said, a problem solver. To me, it's a problem that's common to us that we need to solve. Until we provide real solution to these problems, they will continue. We can't just debate on grounds that, I would like to tax less. Some say I would like to tax more. But thank you. I overstepped my time. Sorry.
Thank you. This third question is again about education. What education policies do you advocate, and what are your views regarding state funding for early childhood, K through 12, and higher education? For this question, we will start with Mr. Hortolosa.
Okay. It seems like 90 minutes a lot of time, but it's not. To really, so you can get a substantive answer from me about these issues, I encourage you to visit my website. And it's really impossible to really explain coherently sometimes something that's meaningful in 90 seconds. But let me address just one of the part of that question, because it's impossible to provide answers for all three. Higher education, like again, we need to figure out a way of transitioning our system where it doesn't just teach things that we know already. I look at my child's work. She brings home work that I have work when I was a child. Why are we teaching kids the same things that we're teaching them, helping them, providing knowledge to problems that we already know? When the internet economy came, this country wasn't prepared to take advantage of it. We didn't have the population to actually take jobs because we are so lagging behind. We need to figure out a way to provide a system where we are encouraging kids to develop critical thinking skills so they can solve problems that we don't know exist yet. I'm telling you, we're going to have challenges about how to provide for food, water, resources. We need to give education to kids that they can be creative in coming up with entrepreneurial and creative solutions. So critical thinking skills is very important. And as a state, it is I think our duty to provide for that kind of education. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. Early education is absolutely critical. I was the author of the first bill to provide state funding for all-day kindergarten. And at the time that bill was heard, the argument was made that children should not leave their home until they were 7 years old. They should be with their mom until they were 7. We've learned a lot since then about brain development, And what we are doing has not caught up with the science of brain development. So we have all-day kindergarten now. I'm extremely glad about that. We have started down the path of providing more intensive education in early childhood, but we're not where we should be for early childhood education. So when we start with quality early, we need to have quality throughout the system and have opportunities for higher education for everybody. And I think everybody in this room would agree that education is a lifetime thing. And we need to have those opportunities for all of us so that we can increase not only our job skills, but our participation in our democracy.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I believe that K through 12 is one of the most important things that the state needs to be involved with because I think it secures our future. And I think in the past that maybe there's been some lack of focus on that, especially the way it's funded. I think that there possibly could be some waste as we are now allocating, I think, 42% of our state's general budget to this. So there's a lot of money being applied to this problem and to educate our children, but I wonder if it's really being done proficiently and without waste. And that's one of the issues that I would be focused on if I were elected.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. Education programs, we had, in the last two-year session, we did invest $40 million in early childhood education and, of course, all-day kindergarten for every student in Minnesota. What we found is that for every dollar invested in early childhood, the return on investment's about $16. So it's a significant return. They're doing more longitudinal studies now, and does the gap narrow? Yes, it does. The achievement gap narrows with early childhood. However, sometimes it doesn't last quite as long as we'd like it to. So I support also after-school programs and some tutoring programs in the schools. I think that it's unconscionable to balance the books on the backs of our schools when we take from schools to balance our state books. I find that a terrible thing to do and a very short-sighted thing to do because you're cheating the kids. And that's what happened 2 years ago, well, 4 years ago, when the other party was in charge. They balanced the books at the state level on the backs of our schools, and that's wrong. I did not vote for that, would never vote for that. We also are looking right now at a tuition freeze. We froze tuition last year for our universities and MnSCU schools. We are looking at keeping it frozen through 2017. And that's something that we're going to tee up at the beginning of the first session, January session. Thank you.
Thank you. The fourth question is, what are your views regarding the current fiscal disparities law? Please describe any changes in the law that you would advocate. For this question, we will start with Mr. Mumblu.
Unfortunately, I'm not very familiar with that, so I guess I'll have to pass.
Mr. Hortolosa?
This is my first time to run for public office, and you are asking about an issue that has been part of the legal system in Minnesota, are you not? So, like my colleague there, I'm a little familiar about it, and I would like to, if you can explain what it is, fiscal disparity, I will be able to weigh in, but as it is, I'm sorry, I do not know exactly, and I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. I'm well aware of fiscal disparities. Fiscal disparities, simply explained, are when communities have a tax base that is large. In other words, they have businesses, they have a lot of housing, their tax base is large. They kick in money for cities and townships that have a lower tax base, fewer businesses, less population. So it evens out the impact of government, the costs of government, for cities with less population and less business economic development tax base. Richfield gets fiscal disparities, Bloomington does not. I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place. But I, on just philosophically, support fiscal disparities because I think it's a fairness issue. I think cities that don't have the tax base should benefit from cities that have a larger tax base.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. Representative Slocum described it well. Fiscal disparities evens out the cost of government over the metropolitan region. I fully support it. I don't look for changes in fiscal disparities in this coming legislative session. I agree that we should be looking for tax fairness in everything we do, and fiscal disparities is part of that.
Thank you. The fifth question is about transportation funding. Do you support increased funding for transportation? If yes, what funding sources would you support, and what are your priorities for use of transportation funds? For this question, we'll begin with Ms. Slocum.
Thank you. Transportation funding, we absolutely are at a critical point with transportation. Our roads are in miserable shape. They are old, they are crumbling, they need investment. We haven't invested very well in our roads and bridges. When the bridge went down, 35W bridge went down a number of years ago, I had 2 kids on that bus you saw hanging off the bridge. 2 of my students were there, and they were devastated. I tell people that if, like 2.5 million Minnesotans every day drive over a fracture critical bridge, that's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable. We all benefit from a good transportation system. We have to invest. I support a wholesale, likely what's going to happen is what happened before, which is a group of people, businesses, government, get together and say, what can you stand? What do you think we can stand here? And then they all get together and say, these are things we need to do. We're going to put this money in. We're going to tax this way. I would think you're going to see a wholesale fuel tax to help fund transportation, which doesn't directly impact consumers, but indirectly it will, to a small degree. I think you're going to see other funding sources also, but it's going to be a coalition of people and government and business and residents to fund our transportation system.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. We have a real transportation problem on our hands. First of all, transportation is what keeps us competitive with other states. A good system, and we can remain competitive. Over the next 20 years, it is projected that just to maintain what we have right now, we have a $5 billion shortfall. If we want to be competitive over the next 20 years, we have a $12 billion shortfall. We can see it all over the place. 9% of our bridges are deficient right now, and there was just news about the Kellogg Bridge in St. Paul, that it is so deficient that they're talking about rebuilding it. That's not a very old bridge. And one of the problems there was a time when we were not investing well in, we were shortchanging what we were doing in infrastructure. It didn't pay in the long run because we're going to replace a 30-year-old bridge. I agree that we're going to have a transportation funding package this year. It needs to be balanced with roads and transit. I would agree with Representative Slocum that it is likely to include a wholesale fuel tax, but it is hard to project what that package will look like right now.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblew?
It's my opinion that a gas tax is only going to affect the poor and middle class because you're just taking away from their food budget. I think there's other alternatives out here. One of them that I thought of right away was maybe they should put off building the $90 million legislative offices. Right now, they're allocating $80 million for roads and bridges. If they put off the building of their building, they could double that and address the problem. But they are correct. The government officials that over the last 4 to 6 years have completely neglected this issue. And the fact is that the roads and bridges are the lifeline of our businesses and our economy, and they've been neglecting it. That's my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
Well, we all know that we need safer or safe structures in our state, bridges especially, because when it fails, people die. It's very critical that we provide for those. And we also need to provide for transportation, building what we call the corridor of commerce, which we know is the way to move goods around. And not only that we need roads and good roads that provide for it, but we also need a way of providing transportation for people that work to these places. Because it doesn't make sense for any employee or any working family to actually spend like an hour on the road because of traffic, just to get to the place of work. And whenever you waste an hour of work, it's productivity loss. So we're losing a lot of money by just wasting time on the road. So we need to figure out a way to provide for a robust transportation system in our state to move goods around and to make the passage of goods and people in these roads safely. One thing that makes the cost of building structures like bridges very expensive are the artificial costs that we add to the building. For example, if you build a bridge, there's a lot of money spent on other things than the actual construction of the bridge. It's unbelievable. It doesn't make sense to spend maybe even a third of the budget for building that structure on other things. And we need to figure out how to solve these things. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to questions from the audience. For this question, we'll be starting with Mr. Hortolosa. What would you do to increase bipartisanship in the legislature and decrease the division between people that exists today?
Oh my God, thank you very much for asking that question, because that's the reason why I'm running. I realize that where I came from, in my culture, where I came from, when I say culture, I'm not talking about where I grew up. I'm talking about the Army culture, which at that time wasn't that important to me, but now I realize that the only way for us to solve problems is for us to view what's presenting before us as common problems, and that if we don't all solve it and work to solve it, we all perish. Even the issue of transportation, education, how we fund pre-K education, these are all great things, but we cannot keep proposing and working on solutions that divide. That's why I have a tagline that says, I'm offering winsome ideas, not just ideas, but these are ideas that are winsome, that will make you want to work with me. Because you see, if we are successful in solving it, we all profit from it. That's why I'm running it for office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I made a commitment on my website and all of my literature that I would work with everyone and anyone to solve problems at the state level. I think that's the only way that you're going to get things done. Gridlock doesn't help anyone and it hurts everyone. There are so many issues that we have to address, and unless we forget about our political parties and our political persuasions, we're not going to get anywhere. So we're going to have to come together and put those things aside and work for the common good.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. That is actually a very difficult question that has been posed. One of the things that we need to do is to have common understanding of what problems we actually have. What are the real problems? So I think it's easier in some areas than others. Let me give you 2 examples. It's easier in the area of transportation because we all know we want to be competitive with other states and globally. So we need a good transportation system. So now defining that, agreeing on what the problem is the first step. Where you run into problems there is some folks who will say yes to transit and some folks will say no to transit. I'm one that's going to say yes to transit and will want transit in a transportation package. So finding the common ground there is going to be difficult. Energy is just the opposite. New sources of energy are extremely difficult to find common ground.
Okay, thank you.
I
Ms.
think it's my turn.
Yes, Ms. Slocum.
Thank you. Bipartisanship. I think that we get a lot of spillover at the state from the national congressional fighting that they do, the dug-in philosophical points of view. I'm here, you're there, we can't get together. At the state, there's a lot more compromise, a lot more. I don't see huge gridlock. I'm point of reference, the most recent tax bill. I was on the Taxes Conference Committee. Half of the people on that conference committee were Republicans. We came out all voting 100% yes. Then we took the bill to the floor for the final vote. The whole board was green. Everyone, Democrats, Republicans, and whatever's in between, voted yes for the bill. That's called reaching out. That's called compromise. That's what you're supposed to do. When you have people that are dug in ideologically, that's when you have gridlock. And that's what they have. They have extremes at the congressional level. And at the state level, we work together.
Great, thank you. This next question will start with Ms. Wagenius. Do you believe the Metropolitan Council should be elected? Why or why not?
That is a debate that has gone on for, I would say, decades, whether it should be elected or not. I would prefer it to be elected. I think we are in a democracy, and we elect folks in a democracy, and we need to have that accountability. So yes, I would prefer that it be elected. I do not see that coming anytime soon. We had a big debate about that, and that debate seems to have recessed. If it were to come back, I would be on the side of election.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. I would like to see the Metropolitan Council elected because of the representative quality that it would then have and the accountability to the people as opposed to whoever appointed them. I think that would make for a more accountable metropolitan-wide government system. So I don't see it happening anytime soon either, but I would support it if it came to the floor.
Mr. Hortolosa?
Well, again, it's my first time to run for public office, if you ask me, you would necessarily say that it's a good thing to elect people to something like the Metropolitan Council. But if the function of that council is to plan for our improvement of our transit and transportation, it doesn't make sense to me to actually elect people there, even though it sounds like a good thing and it's a democratic thing to do. The point is, sometimes we do not really know the kind of people that have the skills to actually become effective in that job. If that job is to plan for the expansion and improvement of our infrastructure, if that's what it does. Because the moment you elect people to something like that as an office, guess what it becomes? It becomes a political process. And you know what happens when it becomes a political process. You will have issues debate as well. And we cannot afford to actually put that kind of a planning in that kind of an environment. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I think that my approach to this would be to put balance to it. I think there should be some elected officials that would represent the community, and then maybe some people that are appointed that are specialists in that field. That would make it more balanced, and there would be some accountability to the citizens. That would be my approach to that, and that's what I'd be for.
Thank you. The next question, we will start with Ms. Slocum. We have had a number of instances of gun violence recently nationally. What would you do to curb gun violence? Do you support limits on assault rifles and high-capacity magazines? Do you support universal background checks?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, I do. I'm on the Crime and Public Safety Committee, and we had a hearing where in the room was packed with people. In fact, people were standing outside lining the hallways, and there was probably more metal in that room than there's ever been in a hearing room at the Capitol before. One of the presenters, a couple of them, came up to the table with the testifying table and put assault weapons there, the semi-automatics. And at that point I left. I support background checks for guns. I support registration for guns. I think it won't take illegal guns off the streets, but it might help. And I think law-abiding gun owners have no problem with a background check because their background's fine. So I think it would help, and I do support that. It's a public safety issue.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
Well, any check is good if it's limited to what it's designed for. When the check becomes intrusive and becomes an issue where one's freedom is limited, then it becomes an issue to a lot of people. Just like owning guns. It's very clear to most common folk that that owning an assault gun doesn't really make sense to the average citizen. But when it is feared by people that restricting access to a form of a weapon leads to restriction to the owning of other weapons, then it becomes an issue to people. Personally, I believe that government should carry the sword, which to me, I believe is the carrying of guns. I was in the military for 20 years. And I also know what damage it can do to anybody. And to make an argument, though, that restricting this kind of things will limit crime and the commission of crimes, sometimes it has no direct correlation to it. What we need to do is provide for ways to get our kids respect for human life and human dignity, and not use violence as a way of making a point.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I'm pro-gun. And the reason being is that it's written in the Constitution that I have that right. And I think that some of the laws, especially in Minnesota, are very redundant. I mean, when I buy a firearm, and I'm a law-abiding citizen and I'm a retired police officer, so for just short of 14 years, I confronted those type of issues on a daily basis. And I think if you really polled police officers, not the political ones, not the political appointees, but the street cops, they don't have a problem with gun ownership and people that are law-abiding citizens owning them, regardless of the configuration. People kill people. Guns don't. Guns are the instrument. You have to change that mentality and that rage that causes people to do that, not the weapon. I mean, I think at one time when I was a police officer, I read an FBI report that said that more people are killed with baseball bats in a year than they are firearms. And I guess my time's up. But I'm pretty passionate about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
I'm thinking about the families who lost children to gun violence. I am for background checks. I am for closing the loopholes like the straw purchase loophole. And I would want to have us have bans on assault rifles. We did it one time, and I think we should have them again.
Okay. Thank you. This next question is related to campaign finance. Would you support full funding disclosure for groups like super PACs? We'll start with Mr. Hortolosa.
Ma'am, could you please repeat that question because I couldn't hear you?
Sure. Would you support full funding disclosure for groups like super PACs? So I believe this question is getting at more information about who is funding campaigns.
Well, if the question is asking about how the funds from the super PAC is impacting elections and how it's used in other races, then I would support full disclosure. But it goes back into privacy issues again. If it's a super PAC, if the question is about a super PAC, should it divulge its donors? If it prohibits people from donating money to that cause or to that super PAC, then I think it's not fair that it should be required to divulge it. What I would like to do is for us to figure out a way where somebody like me who's new running against a 26-year incumbent will have a chance of actually mounting a credible campaign. So I can actually get my message out to people like you, and you will get a chance to know me and what I believe in, because it doesn't make sense for someone to just be in that situation and, she doesn't have to do pretty much name recognition. You have been in office for 26 years. So we have to figure out a way, and I think the PCR in this state is a great thing, by the way, which saddens me because a lot of Minnesotans are actually not using it because it's your way to be involved in the political process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I don't have a problem with them having to disclose who donates to their PAC funds, because if you're adamant about an idea and you believe in it, why wouldn't you want to be recognized as someone that supports it? That's my answer.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
I would support full disclosure. When people don't, this isn't a democracy, and we are voting, and we need to vote with as much knowledge as we can possibly have. And if people don't know who is promoting a message, they may not understand what the economic background, what the vested interest, what the self-interest is in that message. So I do support disclosure.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. Representative Wagenius pretty much hit the nail right on the head. I support full disclosure and transparent campaign fundraising and financing.
Thank you.
I think I was the first.
The next question, and we will start with Ms. Wagenius. What is your position on unfunded mandates?
That's one of those words that has all sorts of different meanings that people put onto it, whether it's broad or narrow. Nobody would support unfunded mandates just for the word, but you've got to be very specific about what you're talking about, not just the general word unfunded mandate. Is it right for the state to mandate that the cities do certain things? I think it is. And cities do have responsibilities. So if you want to label something unfunded mandate because you don't want to do it, Um, that's probably not the best way to talk about an issue. Talk about the real issue. Don't just talk about slogans.
Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. Unfunded mandates. Sometimes money doesn't follow a law, and other times money follows a law change. In some respects, it's good when that happens, and in some respects, money doesn't really need to follow a mandate. So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword when you look at unfunded mandates. Sometimes they're necessary, and sometimes they're good and positive and don't need to have funding following them to accomplish what needs to be done. And other times, you do need money to follow and accomplish what the mandate dictates. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I would need more specifics on that question about what specific unfunded mandate we're talking about here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
So you can tell that from those answers, there's a little issue there because they're contradictory. So when you have a mandate, you assume it has to be funded, because if it requires money to get that mandate executed, where do you get the funding for it? So it has to be funded, right? But here's an example of things that sometimes our legislature does, or the legislators do, is write laws that have secondary effects that they know are almost kind of like puts you in a quandary as to how you're going to carry it out. How can you have an unfunded mandate? A mandate requires like some force that has to be done for, maybe it's for the benefit of the public. If it's for the benefit of the public, then we ought to fund it, right? It makes sense to me. So it seems like it's in itself, unfunded mandate is a way of legislators passing a law that looks good to the public, but they know will not get done or will not get executed because there's no fund, there's no money to pay for it. Come on. Let's put an end to that.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I think unfunded commitments are a very complex issue. Like most of the panel here has said, that it depends on what it is and in the specifics of it. You just can't take something like this and put it in a general term. But I do agree to one comment I'm going to make here, is that it's kind of like passing the buck.
Yeah.
It's like throwing a problem on somebody else's lap and telling them to figure it out, which I think is really unfair. I think that you need to work with everyone involved to come to a common solution to these things. But my first take on it is it's just passing the buck onto somebody else to figure out a problem that they can't figure out, or they don't want to politically make a decision because of the way it might be interpreted. Thank you.
Thank you. This next question is local. What is the status of the 77th Street underpass in terms of funding? We'll start with Mr. Mumblu.
I'm unfamiliar with that, but like I said in a previous answer, if they just put off building their fancy legislative building, the one that's down there is old, but you know what, it's actually historical. If I was elected, I wouldn't mind sitting in that for my whole term. I think if they added that 90 million into the road and bridge budget and doubled, that would over double the money allocated for all these issues. You could make a big dent in the problem.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. I just want a clarification on the office building real quickly, and I'm going to talk very fast. The Senate needs offices. We are rehabbing the Capitol, which is long overdue. It's crumbling, our Capitol. And the senators should be all located in one building. We looked at renting. We looked at rehabbing a building. We looked at all options. We scaled back the building, and that's what's being built. So the senators can all be in one building for constituent services. So it's easy for constituents to find their senators. Anyway, enough said. 77th Street underpass. I worked like crazy with Mayor Gotel to secure the funding for the 77th Street from the state partial funding to build the underpass. The underpass, it's new funding, some of it's cash, some of it's bonding. I lobbied with the chairs of both the committees that do the bonding proposals, and we secured a significant chunk of funding, and we're hoping, because it's new money, there's some process involved, and we're working through the process, and we're still fighting for it, and we will get it soon.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Thank you. Huge credit here to Representative Slocum for securing the money she did. She really, really worked hard on this. I fully supported her. Yay, team. Just, just wonderful work. Thank you.
I had senators that ran from me because I was
She did.
lobbying them so hard, and they were, my friends, so.
She did.
Okay,
That's true.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
Well, I guess that's an example of a case where someone works thinking that this is the solution to this issue. So this is a funding issue. And my colleague Dean mentioned that it would have helped if money spent on building a building that wasn't needed was used to pay for these bridges. So now you get this kind of answers from this side and from this side. Now, if you look at it, the way it explained to you, it seems like it's a good answer. It just makes sense to build a building where everyone can be in one place. But if you're renovating your home, would you consider buying and building a different home while your original home is being renovated? Well, you can give a different answer to that to justify that action. But when you are providing an answer and it's okay, and then ignore what's the issue here, like for this example, lacking in funding. Now we're facing to fund that bridge, the Kilo Bridge, that will probably cost $40 million. It's easy we could build 2 bridges of that sort instead of building this building that wasn't needed.
Thank you. The next question, I think, will be our last question, and then we'll have closing remarks. This question will start with Ms. Slocum. The EPA will be requiring states to lower carbon emissions. What additional steps should Minnesota take to do this? Carbon tax and dividend, question mark, are some options, I guess, they're putting out there. Again, the EPA will be requiring states to lower carbon emitted. What additional steps should Minnesota take to accomplish those goals or those requirements?
Okay, thank you. We are already doing some tax rebates and some tax credits for businesses that do green things and minimize their carbon footprint. One of the things that I personally worked very hard on is the garbage hauling. When you may notice in Richfield and places where they don't have organized garbage hauling, that you'll have up to 24, 27 trucks going up and down your street, one for garbage, one for recycling, one for yard waste. And you'll have all these trucks going up and down your street once a week. I know the league did a study on this, and meeting with the league, I was moved to offer a bill that allowed the garbage haulers to organize themselves and divide up the market share fairly. And the ma and pa haulers were all on board. I worked with them very closely. And we're in favor of this and dividing up the market share so that all you would have would be the 3 trucks on the street, the yard waste, the garbage, and the recycling. And I'm hoping that that's statewide, the process for statewide organized hauling, and I'm hoping that the city of Richfield moves on that soon.
Thank you. Ms. Wagenius?
Minnesota is actually doing a very good job in reducing its carbon footprint. Yay, team for Minnesota. We do have a renewable energy standard, which has produced more wind. We've added a solar standard with more solar. Representative Slocum gave a good example of one of the kinds of things we can, that is in process, which is, again, reducing carbon. One of the things in a bill that I had, it was a Representative Hornstein bill that came into the finance bill, was for us to go to more composting. And so there is a composting standard for the metropolitan area now. Composting will reduce carbon. So there are lots of things we can do, but the biggest ones are going to be on getting away from coal and going to more solar, more wind.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
I am very much for reducing the emission of the emission of carbon. Whenever you burn fuel, you have carbon as a byproduct. So I support any use of biofuel. I support, they call it renewable energy. I call it perpetual energy, you know, the wind and the sun. Lowering the cost of solar panels, lowering there's this notion of lowering marginal cost of, like, for example, solar panels. The reason why I don't have solar panels on my home, because it's very expensive. So we have to figure a way. A free market solution will make it affordable for people to adopt these kind of things, and that's the only way for us to get away from using source of energy like crude oil. It's a deposit. If you keep withdrawing from a deposit, eventually it will run out. We have to figure out a way of providing energy that's perpetual, not just renewable, like nuclear. I don't know why we're afraid of it. We're afraid of it because we can't get rid of waste. You know, Europe is finding a way to actually reprocess waste. We need to build newer plants, safe ones. We have the technology. We have the brains for it.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I guess my first take on this would be that let's not throw caution to the wind. It's not a pun, but I think that there's been a big push right now to alleviate coal, and I think that maybe over a long period of time that would be a smart thing to do, but the studies are showing that if we make too rapid a move to these other alternatives like natural gas, that it's going to create a hardship, again, on poor people, medium class people with a financial burden. The difference between the coal industry has really cleaned itself up, I think, with all the scrubber technology and different new innovative methods of producing energy with coal. I do agree, though, that we have to rely more on renewable sources, but I think that we have to be very cautious about how we do this and how we step into these different programs so that we don't create hardships for people that are less fortunate than some.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to closing statements by each candidate. You'll have 1 minute, and we will start with Ms. Wagenius.
Thank you. The new Senate office building, so I do need to make a comment on that. I think one of the points that's being missed here is the Capitol is really the building for citizens. It doesn't belong to the legislature, it belongs to citizens. Citizens come there to be heard. Right now, there are Senate hearing rooms that are so small that citizens can't get in. You can come into a House office and be heard, but not in the Capitol. So this new Capitol office building will have 3 major hearing rooms so citizens can participate in their democracy. That is smart. I've appreciated the opportunity to serve in the legislature. We've made real progress in this last 2 years, and I hope we can make that progress again in the next 2 years.
Thank you. Mr. Mumblu?
I think it's about priorities, and to just redress her comments, is that it's priorities. I just think it's inappropriate timing myself, but In closing, though, I want to take the time to thank everyone for listening to my reasons for running for the Minnesota House, and I hope that after hearing my positions that I will gather some support and hopefully win my election. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Slocum?
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the League for doing this because informed voters are much better voters, and I hope everybody goes and votes November 4th. Our state is clearly in a better place than it was 2 years ago, very clearly, and by a number of different measures. And I'm going to talk about the economy real quickly to close up. Forbes magazine, hardly a left-wing publication, ranked Minnesota third best state in the nation to make a living in 2014. Up from 6th in 2013. The study considered average salary, cost of living, employment rate, and workplace conditions for each state in the nation. CNBC named Minnesota the 6th best state in the nation to do business. Twin Cities ranked 2nd in the country and 8th in the world for business tax structure. Minnesota was ranked 2nd by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, again, hardly a left-wing group, for our talent pipeline in Minnesota. We're doing great. We need to keep the progress going. Our business climate is good. Our tax structure is positive for businesses and for individuals. It's been a great honor to serve the people of Richfield and Bloomington. I ask for your vote, and I would be honored to have your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hortolosa?
Thank you again to the League for inviting us, and it's a great honor to actually sit side by side with esteemed candidates and incumbents. And again, I'm running because I think I have this unique set of skills and values, having served in the Army for 20 years and having become a skilled problem solver. And if we say that we have arrived and perfection is here, then there's no point in us offering ourselves as an option. We believe that progress can continue for Minnesota. Perfection is not here by any means, and we can do more with renewable energy, with education, with how we are taxing our citizens, how we're spending our money, wastefully or not wastefully, how we prioritize our funding and provide for our citizens. So I ask respectfully the citizens of Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, and Richfield to look at me and consider as an option. The incumbent has served for 26 years, and it's a great service. But if it's public service, I'm offering myself for that opportunity to take this office and give myself, the honor to serve you. And I ask for your vote. And thank you very much.
Well, thank you to all the candidates. It's not an easy thing to take questions that you have not seen ahead of time, and thank you to the audience as well. We'll have a bit of a break, and then we will start for city offices, and that will start at 10:30.
think we're going to get started here in the next minute. So everybody, if you want to call everybody in from the hallway, and so we can get going here with our local candidates. Looks like we got a lot of people coming in. It's great. Okay, we're going to get started again with our local candidates. Again, my name is Susan Rosenberg. I'm president of the League of Women Voters, and I want to welcome, looks like we got some new faces. Glad that you're here. We will get started here with our candidates, and I will turn this on over to Donna Drummond. She will explain the rules again to the candidates, and then we can get started. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Susan, and good morning again. We will start with opening remarks, and each candidate will have 1 minute to provide an opening remark, and then we'll start with the questions. And I'd just like to remind the candidates to please speak into the microphone so that everyone can hear you clearly. So we will start with Mr. Howard.
Hello there. Let me first start by thanking the League of Women Voters and to all of you here and everyone who's going to be watching this forum for coming today. My name is Michael Howard, and I'm excited. I'm excited that soon my wife and I will be raising a family in the city we love, excited to be part of a community that cares so much about its future, and excited to lend my energy and experience to work hard for all of you to build a brighter future here in Richfield. That's why I'm running for the City Council, because Richfield has a rich past and an even brighter future. When I'm door knocking, and I've done a lot of door knocking, every night I talk to someone who's been on the block for 3 or 4 decades, and they love their city and they love their neighborhood. Every night I talk to someone who's been here for 3 or 4 years, and they love their city. There's both such tradition and hope and optimism for the future. And I'm so excited to today talk about some of the ways that we can together build a stronger future here in Richfield. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
For this opportunity to not only make a presentation for the audience, but those that are going to be watching on cable TV. Richfield is a wonderful city to live in, to work, and to go to school in, and do business in. And our future is bright, but there are many challenges that will be facing us as we go into the next 4-year term for mayor of the city of Richfield. We've got the offices of our city manager and a couple of our other directors probably in the next 4 years will be retiring, and so that'll be a major challenge to find good people for those positions as we've had in the past. 77th Street, if we can get the tunnel built under Highway 77, that'll be a challenge as we redevelop those areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
Hi, my name is Debbie Gotel, and I'm the current mayor of the city of Richfield. I've been your mayor for 8 years, and I'm really honored to serve you, and I really want to thank you for this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to moving Richfield forward. We've done a lot of great things. We have a downtown now. We need to finish that up. We have increased the wonderful beauty around Taft Lake Park, and we put in the parkway, and we need to finish that. We put down and got some wonderful bonding with the help of our legislator for 77th Street underpass. This will make a whole new side to the east side of Richfield. I'm so excited. I'm so glad about that. And I just want to say thank you, too, to the League of Women Voters. This has been a long-standing tradition for this forum, and I think that it is very worthwhile for everyone here to be listening and find out more about their candidates. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for allowing me to serve you.
Thank you. We have one candidate, Herb Perry, who was not able to make it this morning, but asked us to read a statement on his behalf. He's running for the at-large seat. Greetings to the citizens of Richfield. I am Herb Perry, running as a nonpartisan candidate to become your Richfield City Council member at large. I appreciate the invitation to participate in this League of Women Voters Forum. Unfortunately, I have a prior commitment I must keep, and I welcome this opportunity to make a statement about my candidacy. As many of you know, I am a 15-year resident of Richfield, and my primary objective as City Council member at large will be to serve all residents. To do that, I will depend on your input, apply my professional knowledge as a certified public accountant, and draw on my many hundreds of hours of experience as an active volunteer on various city commissions, civic committees, and community organizations. Here are some ways I plan to maintain and strengthen our unique city with an urban hometown feel and make it an even better place to live, work, and play. Be your representative at City Hall by listening to you and keeping your interests first. Work on ideas to lower the real estate tax burden on homeowners. Continue to provide adequate housing for all who choose to live here. Maintain an effective working relationship with my City Council colleagues. Once again, I thank the League of Women Voters. This service is invaluable to the voters. Thank you. We will move to the first question, and we will be trading off who goes first in the order so that no one's going first all the time. And just again, a reminder that the timekeeper will be giving you indications of the time left. You'll have 1.5 minutes to answer each of these questions. We'll start with Mr. Kirsch. Why are you running for office, and what will be your major priorities if elected?
Well, I'm running for office again because Richfield is such a terrific community. I've been a former mayor, and I want to continue to see that the city of Richfield continues to be a good place for all of our residents to participate in their government and to live, work, and do business in. There are always challenges, and we've gone through some of those over in the past couple of years, and it just is an exciting time to be able to give new direction and move the city of Richfield forward in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
As I said in my opening remarks, I'm running because I believe Richfield has a rich past and an even brighter future. And I believe that our government at every level can be a positive force for people, for our state, and for the city. And what I can bring to this job as an at-large council member is some experience at the state level. I've worked for several years in the Minnesota House of Representatives, and I'm really proud of the progress we've made at the state level and for Richfield. As Mayor Gotel mentioned, the Cedar Underpass that the legislature was successful at passing is going to be an incredibly helpful thing for the city, and now we need to get to work on seeing that through. And so I look forward to working collaboratively at the local and state level. That's vital, and we can do that moving forward. And in addition, if there's one top priority I have as your council member, it's to be responsive. I think at the local level, that's job number one. It's why I've been out and about, crisscrossing the city, door knocking, trying to be proactive. I don't think as a council member it really should be up to me to wait for a phone call. I want to be out and about, actively seeking your ideas and your input. And as your council member, that's exactly what I'll do. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
One of the things that I mentioned in my opening remarks was that there's a lot of unfinished business here. One of the reasons I want to do that is I want to see some of those things happen for Richfield. And they're not just my ideas, they're your ideas. And I want to move those forward. You wanted a downtown area. Well, we've got a downtown area, but there's some things to be finished. We got the Cedar underpass monies, but we need to pull all the partners together, and we need to make sure that that goes through. So somebody needs to follow that. We need to work on it. And we need to finish the redevelopment on Cedar Point Commons too. Those people who are still left there need some relief. We took half the homes, we put the parkway in, and now developers are coming to the table to see this. One of the other things I want to talk about is we have younger families that are moving in here. Their desire is to have better sidewalks, better streets. They want to be able to have their kids ride their bicycles there. They want better pedestrian access. And we need to be responsive to those new ideas too. And I want to take those into our next policy level meetings, and I want to make some differences with those so those families feel welcome here, and we see only more young families with kids coming to our city right here.
Thank you. Before we move to the next question, I'd just like to remind the audience that you can submit written questions on postcards. So if anyone needs a postcard, please, raise your hand or something to write with. When we are through with the questions prepared by the league, we'll move to those questions from the audience. And I think we will definitely need some questions from the audience because we have an hour yet to go. So the second question, we will start with Ms. Gotel. Should affordable housing be included in either new or redevelopment plans in the city of Richfield?
The council and myself have already talked about this a great deal. My philosophy is that any large projects that come to the city with multifamily types housing should include an affordable piece to them. That's the way we would like to look at it. What that does is it sprinkles the affordable housing all around at like 20% inside with market rate housing. So we don't just take one building and put all the affordable housing in one location. That segregates people, and I don't think that that's the right thing to do. And I think we need affordable housing for some of those jobs that we have in our community. People should be able to have a job in their community and live in their community. But I also think that everyone else, not just Richfield, but Edina and all the other suburbs, should take their fair share of affordable housing as well. We have a lot of affordable housing, and I'm proud to say that. But we do our fair share, and I'm glad to say that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Yeah, it's important that we have some affordability within our community. Most of the new projects that we've added to our housing stock, we've had 20% of them be affordable. Kind of our problem is that the Met Council thinks that we probably should have more, and we're always looking at Bloomington and Edina to make sure that they have an adequate amount of affordability to make it equitable for our city. But it's a smart move to not concentrate all of our affordable housing into one particular unit, but to spread it out throughout the community as we build new housing.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Well, I would echo some of the comments already made on this point. I do think this affordable housing is a regional issue, and we need to see it as such and work to be an advocate for Richfield and work with the Met Council and our neighboring cities and governments and treat this as a regional issue. And it is important that folks of all walks of life have adequate housing, and that's important. But I would also echo comments that concentrating affordable housing isn't necessarily the right thing for Richfield, and it's not necessarily the right way to sort of get at some of the inequities that sort of exist that we need to attack and make sure that we're focusing on.
Thank you. Question 3, and we will start with Mr. Kirsch. Would you advocate any specific policies to promote or guide development in the city of Richfield?
Well, I think it's always important the city council has and the city has the comprehensive plan, and we have zoning laws, and so within those parameters, developers and those that are interested in building things in Richfield need to come before the staff and then through the Planning Commission and in some cases the HRA to have their plans approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
You know, I think it's very important that we have policies that guide redevelopment. But I think what's even more important is that there's citizen engagement. We have a housing policy group right now that is looking at what the changes are and how to guide the council and make recommendations back to us regarding policies around developing that. And I think that's very key. On Penn Avenue, we have had study sessions, many of them, about the redevelopment, and it encompassed not only the citizens, but also the businesses in there. And they laid out the plan of what they would like to see and what might be feasible, and what the businesses thought they could do. We're also looking at this at Cedar Point Commons, too. When some types of developers have come here and decided they wanted to put things down like a McDonald's, I heard loud and clear that that's not what we talked about, that's not what we wanted. And we listened. That was the citizens saying, this is what we want for our redevelopment. And I am really working hard to give you what you want there. So I appreciate your support on that. We will continue to look at policy changes and making sure that citizens are engaged at all levels for redevelopment.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Economic development's a really important issue for the city's future, and it's one of the ways we can make our city more attractive to new families and to really build for a stronger future, long term. One thing that we can do, I think, is just promote all that the city has to offer already. I know my wife Sarah and I chose Richfield when we purchased our first home. It's a great location. There's so many amenities in the city in terms of our great parks and the quality of life that exist. And I want to take some of my communications experience to help promote everything that the city has to offer. And if the areas where we can work to build our infrastructure and improve the quality of life, I think that just makes it all that more easy to make more progress. And I think we have some great progress to build on. The Lindale Gardens area is evidence of, I think, of the future-oriented economic development that we need to see more of in the city. It's a great path forward, and I'm excited to keep making progress.
Thank you. For the fourth question, we'll start with Mr. Howard. Local government aid has been reduced over the past several years, causing cities to examine their expenditures. As a member of the City Council, what would be your spending priorities? Do you see any areas for cutting?
Well, first, local government aid is an issue that I have some experience in at the state legislature. During the recession, it was very clear that the state and local partnership was weakened by policies that reduced local government aid, and that has deep impacts for the city. And I do want to commend the mayor and the city council for dealing with those very challenging times, balancing the need to provide quality public services while also holding down property taxes. I was proud over the last 2 years that the state legislature strengthened that local-state partnership and reinvested in local government aid. That is an asset for the city, and maintaining that strong local partnership is important. But as a council member, I'm aware that, as we've seen, that local government aid can fluctuate depending on who our leaders are at the state level. And so I think it's important that we have dependable budgets that don't necessarily rely on local government aid, and to build budgets that really invest in the bread and butter priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
I was honored to be asked to sit on the LGA task force from the governor's office. In looking at that, we redid the formula, and it seems to be a lot more equitable to all cities, and I really appreciate that. To that end, too, we were garnered a substantial increase from the LGA, and we had experienced great cuts before. We still have a priority here at the city that we will move ourselves totally off of LGA, and that LGA will be used for other things. However, with what we got this year and knowing that we'll have it next year, we did lower taxes for everybody on their property taxes. We still know that people are struggling. We still know that people need this this kind of a level playing field. People are still struggling for jobs. People are still struggling in general with the economy. A lot of people took job cuts. So we, as far as for looking at cutting other places, we have a continuous improvement cycle and every department goes through this on every different year. So one of those things that happened just most recently that we can put our hat to is a very tough decision about moving dispatch. We moved the dispatch out of the city over to Edina. That was a difficult decision, but it is a huge savings for the city, and we still have the same level of service. We are continually looking at each department all the time to do those kinds of savings for our citizens. We have automated things. We've done other things to make sure that our budget is balanced every single year. So we will continue to get some LGA. We will put that back, and we will use it for other projects.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Well, the Richfield City Council in the last couple of years has done an outstanding job on trying to present a balanced budget, which they've done. And they've made the decision to not use LGA for balancing the budget, at least all of it, and put some of that money into a rainy day fund, and that's an important fact that they've done. The city budget, when you look at it, really has been cut down. The number of employees that are on the city staff have been drastically cut back, and yet most of the services that the city has been able to provide for you residents has really not, you really can't notice that there's much of a cutback. So we're thankful for that. So we just need to keep up with staying on top of our budgets and have our staff continually work with their department heads to come in with a balanced budget for all of the residents of Richfield.
Thank you. For our fifth question, we'll start with Ms. Gotel. As a member of the City Council, what approaches would you support to generate additional revenue?
I think one of the things we can do to have additional revenue is to talk about our city services that we already provide. And some of those do have revenue streams. One of the things that we have noted since the York Avenue facility for passports has not been allowed to do passports is that we've been advertising about what we do. We do passports. Richfield has a setup that we can do that. We have seen increases like you wouldn't believe in the number of passports, and then they come and use our other services. And so we're marketing to them about that as well. I think there's other avenues for increased revenues. One of the things that we do well, and we will continue to do, is seek out partners when we do projects and look for grant dollars wherever we can. We have some outstanding city staff who bring in those dollars. We have great relationships at the state level and at the metropolitan level and with our legislators, and they help us to go to those different places and say, hey, this is available. Go get these dollars, and that's what we do.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Well, I'd say the number one thing we can do is to continue to promote a city that makes this a more inviting place for new families and new businesses. And there's many ways we can do that. I would echo what the mayor said about working with our partners at every level of government. That's very important. And the reality is, in a lot of the big opportunities coming before us, especially in transportation, that partnership is going to be vital. And so we need to be working together with our state leaders in every level of government to make sure that those projects move forward. And the underpass over Cedar is a prime example. Moving that forward as a single project is going to have a ripple effect that's going to benefit our city, that region, and really the whole city. And I think that moving forward and using those partnerships is a great way to go about doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
The Richfield City staff has done an outstanding job and able to bring us grant dollars, and that's really important for them to do. Also, we need to keep up with our new housing stock. In Richfield, I think over the last year or so, we've seen about 10 or more brand new houses going on lots that were kind of substandard, and most of the houses that were built were somewhere in the $300,000 price, so that raises the taxes. The other thing is, as the 77th Street corridor becomes available for development, we could see some really marked development that would occur there, maybe a major hotel, and some other things that are related to the airport that would be beneficial for the city of Richfield.
Thank you. For this next question, we'll start with Mr. Kirsch. Recently, the Richfield League of Women Voters completed a study and adopted a position in support of organized garbage collection in Richfield. What are your views on this idea?
In a lot of cases, as I've been walking around, and periodically that question comes to the table, it appears that the present system that we have, and I know that it isn't as efficient probably as it could be, but I've heard from a lot of residents that prefer to be able to, on a voluntary basis, decide who their carrier will be. If your carrier sends you a bill and says we're increasing the price of your garbage and you're not happy with that price increase and you can't negotiate for a lower price with him, you can go to one of the other haulers in the city of Richfield. So at some point in time, I'm sure that probably is going to come before the city council. And the other thing is, we don't want to have another whole bureaucracy that the city has to put together to manage the garbage hauling in the city of Richfield.
Mr. Howard?
This is an issue that's come up quite a bit as I've been door knocking, and it's usually someone makes the point, gosh, how, as I'm looking out my window, I see about 14 garbage trucks come down my road every week. Isn't that inefficient? And the answer is yes, it is. And so I definitely am open to the idea of organized trash and recycling, but I think it is an issue where the details matter. The evidence that I've seen is there are ways to do this and negotiate the types of contracts that provide cost savings to the people of Richfield, and perhaps even more importantly, just better service or more options. For example, a smaller trash container or rebates if you're going to be on vacation for several weeks. And those kinds of services, I think, are important to folks. And it's an idea that's worth pursuing because I think there's a potential solution that improves the quality of service that people in Richfield receive.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for first taking on this issue and doing such a great study on this, and also opening our eyes to a lot of things that are going on in the city. I too have heard some things, and some of them I've heard of who decided on those ugly red trash cans. And some, and other people love red. I wear red. So, everybody has their own perspective. But one of the things that Representative Slocum did in her bill was she was able to write it in such a way that all the garbage haulers have to come together. And so we still have competition. We still have the small garbage haulers coming through, but it will still be one truck through a particular block. But it may be a multiple use of different venues. It may be several companies that do the city, but they're all going to negotiate together. And she made that as part of her bill. I think that was very wise and very smart. I also want to say that a lot of folks really want to push to the curb day, and we're not going to get that without some organization in the trash hauling. And a lot of people could really use that. That would be a great thing for everybody. I think we want to watch these other cities, as the league said, and look at those contracts, because it's the devil's in the details. We could get a better contract by looking at the mistakes that other cities have done or some of the great contract language that they've had. And that's what we're going to do when we look at this issue again.
Thank you. Our next question, we will start with Ms. Gotel. What ideas do you have for promoting the city of Richfield?
Well, we've already talked about that. We talked about branding the city. And what you're going to notice at some of the entrances into our city, like up on Portland, are these new, big, beautiful monuments that weren't even paid for with our dollars. They were MnDOT dollars. And they will have the city of Richfield on them. And that will be beautiful. And so branding our city is a very important thing. We're also doing a lot through the tourism. Tourism Board is doing a huge branding initiative. We also have the Chamber of Commerce, who is also working on this branding piece of that. And they're bringing out a whole new promotional program on how people see Richfield But we as a city council all need to be on the same board, talking the same thing, and talking about the great things about Richfield. We do ourselves a disservice by not doing that, by not tooting our own horn enough. You know, we can sometimes just be those quiet people loving our community that we live in. But if we don't tell everybody else about it, they won't know. It's the best kept secret. Richfield is the best kept secret.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
We need to continue to work with our Chamber of Commerce, with our tourism board, with our school district, as we promote the city of Richfield. Richfield really isn't just a sleepy suburb. We are regional. We attract a lot of people coming in from Minneapolis, and those that are driving down Highway 77 going through our city stop off and shop at our liquor store and some of our other stores. So we need to continue to blow our own horn about how wonderful the city of Richfield is. And you're going to see in the next couple of months, hopefully, a whole new package of materials, probably a whole new city logo will emerge as we go out and try to promote Richfield as the best place to work, to live, and to go to school in and do business in. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I do think the number one thing we can do is all of us be, as elected officials in the local level, promoting our city, not just here in Richfield, but outside of it. You know, Richfield isn't on an island. We're part of a region, we're part of a state, and we have a lot to offer here. So, you know, every chance I get, I will be advocating and promoting Richfield. I already do that. You know, folks at the, when I'm in Minneapolis or St. Paul, especially during winter, I'm constantly talking about how great our snow plowing is comparatively to our.
So true.
And that's just one very limited example. This is a great city, and we need to promote it. And it's an area where I think my experience can be an asset. I work in communications at the state legislature, and part of that job is telling the story about what it is our legislators are doing to make things better across our state. And I want to do that at the local level as well, to promote Richfield. And one specific area I do want to mention that I think is vitally important is education. We need to be doing everything we can to partner with our local school district to continue to make Richfield a better place to raise a family and a better place for our kids to have opportunities both inside and outside the school. I think that is something that makes Richfield more attractive to new families and to new businesses, and it's something that you know, doesn't happen overnight, but we need to continue to work at it, and I'll make it a big priority on the City Council.
Thank you. We will now move to questions from the audience, and we did get quite a few questions that were sort of duplicates, so we had some assistance in kind of picking a question that was the most inclusive question for that topic. So the first question, we will start with Mr. Howard. This is related to 66th Street. How will you as a council member respond to residents that do not understand that our roads are old? Examples include gas explosions and water main breaks.
Well, I'll just talk generally about 66th because it's one of the most vital opportunities for Richfield's future. It's a major thoroughfare, of course, for the city, and we have the opportunity to remake that in a way that's going to set Richfield for a stronger future, not just now, not just 10 years from now, but a generation from now. That's the kind of approach we need to take, is build that corridor to last and build it in a way that really envisions the future. And so we do need to improve the infrastructure in a way that responds to some of those concerns. And we also need to make it in a way that is cognizant of improving options for folks in cars, pedestrians especially in that area. I think anyone that has walked on 66 now can feel the rumble literally as you walk by, so we've got some work to do there for pedestrians. And also to find a way for those of us on bikes, how that fits as well. So we've got a lot of challenges there, but more than anything, it's an opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
Well, I'd like to address all of them. One of the ways that I respond to residents when they have questions about anything, 66th Street, the gas explosion, or water main breaks, is, believe it or not, I don't just door knock every 4 years. I literally go out and door knock on issues too. And I literally go to their homes, door knock them, ask them what they think. I ask some of them to have coffee with their neighbors. They sometimes do that. They come visit me at the farmer's market because I'm down there most Saturdays except for this morning. I'm here. I'm at the Wood Lake Nature Center in the winter. I go to churches and other functions so that I am very visible, that people see me. And I talk about the funding mechanisms and why we're doing this. A lot of those residents, they remember 50 years ago, we had new roads. It's been 50 years, sometimes 60. We do have to have new roads. But we spread the funding out too so people aren't taking huge assessments out in the front of their homes. People are very glad and very grateful to hear that as I'm out door knocking. I will continue to do that kind of advocacy so that I can get the flavor of the neighborhood and the people who are impacted.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
I think one of the things that we don't always realize is that 66th Street is a county road, and so the county realized some years back that their road was in need of some major rework. And so they came to the city of Richfield, and through its Transportation Commission, which I am the chair of, said, we've got a way that we're going to put this road together, but if you participate with us through your Transportation Commission, we will let you give us some good input. And so that roadway being 60 years old, and what we're trying to design for now is probably a road with new products and things underneath the street that will last for 75 years. When that road was originally constructed, the major way of driving was with the automobile. Well, now we know what's happened in the future, that pedestrians are important, bicyclists are important, and so we're taking all of those things into consideration as we redo that road.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Gotel. Someone has proposed having sidewalks along every street in Richfield. If you support that idea, how much do you think it would cost? How would it be paid for? And who would do the snow removal? Should homes and businesses be taken if necessary?
I want to say that the council has had a lot of discussions about that. And to tell you the truth, I really support sidewalks in some places and not throughout the entire city. I think our safe routes to school, we put in some new sidewalks for that. I think our crumbling infrastructure sidewalks has to be addressed, and we are addressing those things. I don't think that the city wants to pay for all those, and I don't think all neighborhoods need a sidewalk in front of them. And right now, the citizens really appreciate the fact that the city goes out and plows all those sidewalks. We're the only city that does that. We could not do that if everyone had a sidewalk in front of them. It's an awful lot of elderly and other people who cannot do that. The cost and the maintenance and the upkeep and the burden, I don't think justifies sidewalks throughout the entire city.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Again, the Transportation Commission has had that proposal before it that we put in more sidewalks. There is on the books right now a way that residents in a block, if they come before the city council, can request that a sidewalk be put in front of their place, and I don't know of any requests that have come forward. And another thing that we looked at was if we put sidewalks in front of most of the houses, we would probably have to eliminate most of our trees unless you stuck the sidewalk almost up to their front door. And so that just, and again, the request is there by neighborhoods. If you want a sidewalk, bring it to the city council through the Transportation Commission and see where it goes.
You, Mr. Howard?
I think that there's definitely opportunities to improve access for pedestrians and improve availability of sidewalks in the city, but it's about prioritization and making things a priority. I think the priority should be areas where pedestrians need access to transit, for example. But I would share that, a one-size-fits-all kind of model of just going throughout the city and just deciding we were going to put a sidewalk every place isn't particularly workable. And again, it's an area where citizen input is very, very important. Folks locally should weigh in and about what they want in their specific neighborhood, on their specific block. And that input is really vital as we consider this type of a prospect.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Howard, and it's somewhat similar. What are your feelings with respect to bicycling and multimodal transportation in Richfield's future development?
Well, I think it's important. As we look to the future, we have to realize that we need a transportation system that recognizes that folks are going to be driving cars, that folks are going to be on bikes, and that we're going to have folks that want to be pedestrians. And so all of them are important. And I think that Richfield has done a good job in several areas of the city, making our city more biker friendly. And I think we still have some work to do to make the city sort of, connected throughout, so that cyclists can have access throughout the city. And in various areas, it's about striking the right balance. We always need to be cognizant of that. But biking is important, and it's one of the ways that we can make our city more attractive to new families and new businesses. And so it's something that's we need to make sure is part of our decision making as we make transportation investments for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Well, as we've worked on all of our streets from Portland, Necklet, 66th Street, and Penn Avenue, we are designing them so that there will be accommodations for bicycles in a safe way, and that there will be sidewalks that will be adequate for young children with their parents to bike along those corridors. And so I think it is important, because we're going to end up with, I'm positive, with more bicyclists than we probably think we are as that kind of turns over. And right now it's difficult to drive a bicycle on most of the sidewalks in Richfield because they are crumbling, and so we need to bring those up to a brand new standard, which we are going to do as we get these streets redeveloped.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
There's a paradigm shift here. The paradigm that shifted was the car's not first anymore. Pedestrians should be first, and then the bicycle and transit, and then the car. And when you redevelop roads, streets, sidewalks, that puts things back very differently. And I agree with that. Putting pedestrians first is key. That's a safety issue. And specifically, when we look at the modes of transportation, if people want to use bicycles, some of them are commuters, they want to be on the street. But our children going to school, safe routes to school, sometimes need a path. They don't need to be on the street. Some of those streets are still very dangerous. There are also a lot of trade-offs. We are a fully developed suburb, and trying to fit all those modes in doesn't always work. So we have compromises. So we have mixed-use paths. Those are some of the things that we can do, and we can still maintain a really good hierarchy and start putting the pedestrians and bicyclists above the cars.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Kirsch. Please describe your thoughts on the redevelopment of the Academy of Holy Angels front lawn. Are you in favor of the vision by Holy Angels to convert it and develop it?
Well, that's an interesting whole topic. And the way I look at that, Holy Angels is a private organization. They have duly elected board members, and by a vote of 16-4, that board of directors have decided that they were going to propose something to the city of Richfield, which they haven't entirely done yet. And so I think until it comes to the city and we see all of the specifics and whether they can meet the comp plan and the zoning laws, I'm kind of in a hold pattern. But, there hasn't been any attempt by those that don't want that project to be built to do a recall. I mean, it would seem to me that that would be something you would do, is try to recall those board of directors and go with a whole new way of taking care of that issue.
Ms. Gotel?
Because I may have to vote on this and I'm the mayor of the city right now, I can't answer in an opinion, but let me tell you this, that this would be a large change to the comp plan. This would be a large zoning change. And this would also set a precedence, not only for Academy of Holy Angels, but any other development that would be similar. So a school, a church, another building, who also wants to sell off a portion of the land and expects a city council or wants a city council to make very large comp and zoning plan changes. So I think there's a huge issue in this as far as for a discussion, and I think we need a lot of input, and I'm getting a lot of great input back when I'm out door knocking. I really appreciate that. I really think we have to look at this as we develop as a whole city. I think there are also some issues around what the face of retail will look like in the future. It's much smaller, the footprint is smaller, and people are using the internet. So this is a different vision I think we have to look when this moves forward. It's not moved forward yet. They yet have to put an application. When the application comes in, we'll have another discussion.
Okay, Mr. Howard?
What I would say is, likewise, the fact that we don't have a plan yet from Holy Angels makes it hard to make a, to give concrete opinions. But I can say that as I've been door knocking, I've heard a lot about this issue. And, I've heard about concerns, concerns about congestion in an already congested area, concerns about what this could mean for the hub, and really just concerns about the future of economic development in our city. As the mayor mentioned, the face of retail is changing, and so that's a consideration as we look at this issue in its entirety. And everyone in Richfield has a stake in this, and it's important that we have a public process and an open one, and I'm committed to that.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Mr. Kirsch. Richfield is becoming increasingly diverse. What ideas do you have for making sure all residents, including those whose first language is not English, feel welcome and thrive economically?
Well, it seems to me that we constantly have a problem attracting minorities to sit on city commissions, and that's always bothered me, is that somehow we haven't been able to attract them to come and sit at the table with us on our various city commissions, which are so valuable to the city council and the city staff, as we have the input from those that are associated with a particular activity in the city of Richfield. And so trying to encourage them to become involved in the city, and probably have some sessions where we bring in minorities and have a session and explain the workings of the city more clearly to them would be very helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Richfield is becoming a more diverse place, and I think that's a good thing. I think the diversity in our city is an asset. It does present new opportunities and new challenges. And one of the things that I think are most important is to consider our education system and to partner with our schools and work hard to make sure that there's opportunities for all kids to have an opportunity to learn. And that might require, changes in the way we're thinking about our education system and not really having a one-size-fits-all mode. And our schools are doing great things, and we should just work to continue making progress in that regard. The other thing I'll mention is that I think as city leaders, we can be proactive and not wait for folks that haven't participated yet in our process to come to us. We need to come to them and be active out and about throughout our city and work hard to build public awareness and build new input and new connections with folks in different communities that maybe haven't participated too readily in their local government yet. And I'll strive to do that on the council.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
I want to start by saying that we already are working with our schools, and our schools have outreach workers that are bilingual and work with our students. They are activating those parents now, and I have been invited to that table, so I at least have a voice to talk about what the city can do for them, so we can take the fear out of that. Where I'm also working with MIRA, which is our Latino organization that helps, and La Misión. Also the churches. I regularly go to the churches and talk to our minority groups about what the city can do for them. So I'm actively seeking that. And some of our commissions are becoming more diverse. The Advisory Board of Health, the Human Rights, and the Arts Commission all have diversity on them. The other thing that's happening in our commissions, they are getting younger. I'm so pleased to see young people coming here. We have a Hennepin County Outreach Coordinator here too. We are working hard at this. This is heavy lifting to do this, and all the communities are struggling together. We're not going to give up. We're going to bring these people to the table.
Thank you. The next question will start with Ms. Gotel. How important is it for the City Council to be partnering with our school district?
That's such a vital piece that I actually made myself the school liaison. We didn't have that position, and I actually said I will liaison with the schools. I regularly meet with principals. I meet with the superintendent. We talk about issues. We talk about referendum. I speak to board members on a regular. I call them up. I ask them what's going on. How can we partner more? The city has actually been able to help the schools save dollars by sharing some of our resources in some of their athletic facilities and using some of our own dollars to help improve them because we use them too. So that helps your schools. Any way we can help your schools by letting them use our space in our parks, to coming to the table and allowing them to have outreach types of groups out here at the City Hall, to move them off here, to helping with the lunch program in the summer for our Park and Rec department so we can give kids a meal through the summer. We will continue these partnerships. So I'm really proud to say that we're going to continue that, and it's only going to grow.
Mr. Howard?
Education is an issue that's near and dear to my heart. My mother just retired this year as an elementary special education teacher for 37 years. And she really taught me that every kid deserves the opportunity to succeed. And I really think that that's the holistic approach we need to take here at Richfield. And that work is happening in our schools already, and we can grow upon that and work and partner with our school districts so that inside and outside the classroom, kids have opportunities to learn and succeed. And it is just one of those issues when I'm out door knocking, when I'm talking with folks that have been in Richfield for a while, I've heard multiple times someone say, the greatest thing just happened. A young family moved in and there's kids in our neighborhood again. I just think that's wonderful, and we need to work to continue to make Richfield a great place to live and raise a family.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Our partnership with our school district is vital for us, and we need to continue to foster that whole thing as we meet with them periodically, and to make sure that if there are things that the city can do to make things easier for the school district to succeed, we need to do that.
Thank you. This question will start with Mr. Howard. What will you do to attract new families and citizens, and why is that important for Richfield?
Well, we've sort of talked about this question in multiple forms so far today, and it is one of the vital opportunities for us, for our city in the future, to do just that. A couple things. One, I'll be a vocal champion for Richfield in and outside of the city. This is a great place, and I will tell people far and wide, the reason that my wife Sarah and I chose Richfield when we purchased our first home. And I want to sell that story and sell that to Richfield, people throughout Richfield and throughout other regions of the state to bring new families here. The other thing that we can do, as we've talked about, is improve our transportation infrastructure and do it in a forward-looking way. 66, the underpass, both vital opportunities to make our city more attractive to new families and new businesses. And then the last thing I'll mention is just the ability to partner with all levels of government. In my experience at the state legislature, I've seen how important it is when we have local leaders work with our state leaders to develop strong solutions at the local level. And we had just the greatest example of that this past legislative session when our state representative, Linda Slocum, worked really hard and with our local leaders to pass funding for the Cedar Underpass. And we're going to have more work to do.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirsch.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What will you do to attract new families and citizens, and why is that important for Richfield?
Well, one of the biggest things that we've done in the past and we need to continue to do is to refurbish our housing stock, which, like I indicated before, we've done 10 brand new houses, because as we turn over the stock for our senior citizens who at some point in time in their life decide that they can't deal with their housing, we need to have adequate housing for them to move into, and then that will in turn turn over their houses. And in a lot of cases, we still have a number of houses that are substandard, and as we build brand new homes, that attracts. And it really is encouraging as you're out and about in the city of Richfield to see more children out and about on the streets and in their yards playing, and that the voices of young people in our community is just really exciting.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
Well, it's vitally important because our baby boomers are moving out of their houses, and they don't want to take care of those big houses. So we want these families here. We want these young, friendly people, these professionals. We need to be friendly. We need to have transit. We already have that. We have some of the highest ridership right here in Richfield. But we have other attractions too. We have a great park and rec department. We have a public pool. That's a fabulous system. We have an ice arena here. We have the STEM school. We have the dual language school. We have charter schools. We have private schools. We have a lot to offer, and we need to tell everybody about this. We also know that some of these families are growing. We have forgivable loans for homes improvements. So people can stay in their home and they can grow in their home. You know what? We need to bring the amenities here that attract the new generation. So we need to be talking to them. We need to be figuring out what they want to see in their city too, and then we need to implement it.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mr. Kirsch. Richfield needs a voice in regional issues. How will you increase our input in regional decision-making by regional entities?
Well, we have the League of Cities and various organizations like that that's important for the mayor and the members of the city council to be members of, and so we meet regionally. We get involved with the Met Council, and we need to be in communication with our fellow cities, Bloomington and Edina, so that we're always aware of what each other are having come up on their agendas, so that we can have a good discussion with them if there's something that we see that's going to be detrimental to the city of Richfield.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Well, I think it is vitally important, and like we've said multiple times today, almost every major issue and every challenge and opportunity in front of us involves some level of collaboration that needs to happen between different levels of government. And it's important that we approach this as positive collaborations. You know, it's going to be my approach as a council member to be a strong advocate for the city and to try to build strong relationships, relationships that some of that I already have at the state level and want to work to strengthen, and then want to work hard to build strong relationships with neighboring cities and governments, and find that common ground, find that area where we can collaborate in a positive manner. And I think just strengthening and building on those positive relationships is the best way we can do that.
Ms. Gotel?
I really saw this as a need for Richfield to be at the regional table, and I made that happen. I sit at the League of Minnesota Cities. I am a board member on the League of Minnesota Cities. We have a regional voice there. We work a policy on a regional level there. I sit on the Met Council Housing Planning Policy Board as well. We talk about all the affordable housing and how we get all kinds of housing and transit together. I sit on that board. I sit on the Opportunity Corridor, so we talk about the issues of economic problems with people and jobs. I sit at the Regional Council of Mayors, and I'm on the executive board there. And we talk about regional issues with other mayors. And I work with our sister cities, and I meet with the cities of Bloomington and Edina on a regular basis. Networking, networking, networking. At the city, at the region, with our state legislators, and with our federal legislators. That's how we come to the regional table. And that's why we're recognized as a regional player now. And I'm really proud to say that that was a great accomplishment for this city.
Thank you. This next question, we'll start with Ms. Gotel. Would you support putting garbage cans on bike paths to decrease the trash that is accumulating?
That's an interesting question. I haven't heard that before, but to tell you the truth, being a bike rider myself, I don't think that I would want to have to go around trash cans. I think we need to figure out how to do this in a way that works for everybody, but I think that could be a hazard, especially for our kids going to school, and I don't want to see anybody in an accident at all. We always worry about the cars and other things, but we don't think about something like trash cans, but that would be any kind of impediment in a bike trail. We don't allow cars to park over the cross of those trails. I don't know why we would allow a trash can to be over those trails either.
Mr. Kirsch?
Well, in some cases, it would seem that it might be wise. Our problem is that we end up with people dropping off things that aren't recycling and putting their trash in a container. So if there was some place along the bike path that we could put a container that wasn't in direct conflict with the bicyclist and those that are walking, I think that might be a wise thing.
You, Mr. Howard?
By and large, I don't think we should be making our bike paths obstacle courses. And, you know, it just seems like, you know, there's got to be a better solution. So one of those issues where I think if an individual has an issue that they're having specifically with trying to figure out where to put their trash, I'd love to have a conversation and figure out if there's a better option for us to consider than putting obstacles really in our bike paths.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Mr. Kirsch for this next one. What will you do to improve responsiveness on the City Council?
Well, I think the key to that is you need to be a good listener, and so and be prompt in your response to your constituents if they call you or try to get in contact with you, that you respond immediately and that you are a good listener.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
I think one of the things that I've done to try to be more responsive to the constituent base is be available everywhere. If you come up to me in the doggone grocery store and stop me, I'm going to take time to listen to you. But I'm down at the farmer's market every Saturday. I'm out at the Woodlake Nature Center on the weekends. And I'm out at churches. I'm out at events. I'm out at open houses. I am as available as I can be. I also respond to the emails and get back to people and say, you know, I have somebody working on this. Please provide me with contact information so I can circle back with you. And so I do circle back even if I drop something to staff. So I think being responsive is being that way. But again, when there's a big issue, I'll go out, even in the winter, and I'll door knock a neighborhood just to find out where things are at. And so I have the perspective of the residents so I can bring that back to city staff.
You, Mr. Howard?
Being responsive will be my top priority as the at-large council member. I think at the local level, really that's job number one, to be responsive to everyone in the city. And as the at-large council member, I'd be representing everyone in the city. So it's vitally important. And, you know, I really like the idea of our local government being the most responsive, that, you know, if your street light is out and it hasn't been replaced and you call your council member, that's my job to spring to action. And that's sort of the approach that I will take, is sort of being as accessible and as open as possible. One thing I want to do is not expect folks to come to me with their problems or concerns. I want to be proactive and be out and about in the community as much as possible. I want to have constituent meetings in every ward, in every region of the city on a regular basis to make it easier for people to participate in their local government. And I think that in my communications background will be important as well. because I want to work to improve the ways that the city can let folks know what's going on and make it easier to participate.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with Mr. Howard for this next one. How would you promote living wage jobs in Richfield?
Well, first, this is very important for our city, for our state. I was really proud to work at the state legislature this past session to raise the minimum wage. It will increase wages for over 300,000 Minnesotans. And we know that when you expand wages for low-wage workers, that you're expanding the middle class and you're expanding our economy and helping it grow. So I'm very committed to working within our city and within our state to make it easier for folks to earn a livable wage. When you earn a livable wage, you can pay for groceries. You can make sure that you have food on the table. It's a vital priority and it's a basic priority that we need to make a priority in our city and really throughout the state.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
Well, I want to say that I also agreed with the raise of the minimum wage. I think people need to be able to work a full-time job and still be able to put food on the table and live in a home. I want to promote living wage jobs in our redevelopment as we look down the corridor and we get the Cedar Underpass. Living wage jobs are key, and that underpass actually will make access to living wage jobs over at the airport. Those mechanics, those kinds of folks who work on those airplanes in the airport, those are living wage jobs. United Healthcare, those are living wage jobs. We need to provide access and we need to redevelop smartly and look at who comes to the table to provide the better jobs for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
Having proper wages is very important, and as we've said here, the underpass under Highway 77 can be crucial to some of our citizens, as they have in the past worked at the airport. Some of them working over at the Mall of America will have easy access, and that's important. And then as we develop the corridor in the eastern end, there probably will be a lot of good jobs that our residents can participate in.
Great, thank you. For the next question, we'll start with Ms. Gotel. Who are the leaders you model yourself after? What is your leadership style?
Geez, there's so many, I don't know, we can go back in history and we can pick hundreds of them like Thomas Jefferson and everything. So let me talk about my style, because it's a lot like those kinds of people back in history. It's collaborative. We wouldn't be anywhere, we wouldn't be at the regional table if there wasn't collaboration and there wasn't networking. So it's not all about me. It's about the council, it's about our staff, it's about our residents, it's about coming together as a collective and moving forward. That's the style that I have for leadership. I open up, I listen. That's why I go to all the open houses that I can participate. That's why I visit commissions, because I need to hear what's going on, because we need to do it together. We need to move together. We are stronger together in a collaboration.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I'm going to mention a few people. The first one is my first entrance or introduction into public service was interning for Senator Paul Wellstone. He's someone that I admire, especially for his energy and his commitment to putting people first. There was never any doubt in people's mind, no matter where you stood in the issues, that Paul cared about people. And that is important in public service for our leaders to always know that it's not about us, it's about the people. And so that's vitally important. And the other Paul I'll mention is Paul Thiessen, my current boss and Speaker of the House in the Minnesota legislature, and someone that has represented Richfield. Working for the Speaker, I've seen how important it is to bring people together and work collaboratively, always with the idea that it's the objective and the result that matters. I think sometimes it can be easy to sort of get lost in the muck, but it's the objective and the result that matters, and we always need to work together to achieve results.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
When I got involved in city government many years ago, my mentor was Mayor Lauren Law. As I sat in the audience and learned from how he conducted the city business, and that was very helpful for me as I moved up the ladder to be a council member and then to be mayor of the city of Richfield.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one last question, and then we will go to closing remarks. For this last question, we'll start with Mr. Kirsch. Recently, there have been multiple articles on open enrollment and how it has caused racial segregation in Richfield Public Schools. There have been articles in the media about that. How would you deal with this issue, and what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not directly involved in that, but I think our school district, together with our Board of Education, have done a good job in trying to make all of that work for the city of residents of Richfield. And that is a major problem when you try to bring all of these different minorities, and I don't just offhand recall the number of different languages that are spoken at the high school, but that really causes a major problem, and the administration and the school board have done a good job in trying to walk a good balance there.
Okay, Mr. Howard?
The number one thing we can do is continue to make Richfield a better place to raise a family and improve our schools and make this an attractive place for our kids to stay and raise a family. I know that, that basically with our schools that we have now, they're doing a great job, and we have a new superintendent that I think has a ton of energy and is going to exert some really great leadership for our schools. And we just need to continue looking to the long term. I do think some of the things we've done at the state level in terms of investing in our earliest learners at the state level with all-day, everyday kindergarten and some pre-K investments, those kinds of things are going to be vital in a community like Richfield with our youngest learners. That'll help us reduce the achievement gap that is present in Richfield and throughout the many regions of the state. That'll be vital that we continue to work at. And as we close those gaps and as we make Richfield a stronger and better place to raise a family, I think that will help us move forward on an issue like this.
Thank you. Ms. Gotel?
I think this is very vital for us to be raising this issue right now. I have had several conversations with the new superintendent regarding this. The numbers don't lie. Families of color are discouraged from going to some of the other schools. And we are approaching and broaching this problem. And we are having those discussions with the other school districts and what kind of language and verbiage they're using and why this is happening. I think that any kid who wants to go in open enrollment to anything should have that access. And somehow we're discouraging this. And so we're going to be working on this as we move forward. We're going to be looking at how we can do better at this. We share a lot of resources between Edina schools and Bloomington schools, and sometimes Richfield's on the short end of that. And we now know that, and we're demanding that we are treated equally in that arena as well as at the city.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to closing statements, and I will read a closing statement from Herb Perry, who again could not be here, and then we'll start with Ms. Gotel. So this is from Herb Perry. In closing, I ask that you check my experience and background before you vote on November 4th. Working together, we will make Richfield an even better place to live, work, and play. Thank you. I will sincerely appreciate your vote. Okay, Ms. Gotel?
I just want to close again and say thank you to the League of Women Voters for inviting us here and a vital forum that we should all be participating in, and that this will be televised. This is a great thing. I want to say that Richfield is now at the regional table. This is key. This was key in getting the underpass through. When Linda came to me and said, this is our year, Debbie, clear your table. You're going to be down at the Capitol a lot, and you're going to be paying a lot of visits. I want to thank her. I want to thank all of our legislators who all got on the table. But we would not be a regional player unless we were at all these regional tables. We need to continue doing this. We garner an awful lot from those, and our city is richer because of that. We get a lot more resources because of those things and because of our relationships. I will continue to do that. I want to thank you for your past support, and I want to ask you for your vote in November.
Thank you. Mr. Kirsch?
It's important that we all remember, well, first of all, I want to thank the league for sponsoring this time, and that hopefully a lot of people will watch us on cable. Richfield is, for 52 years that I've lived here, has been an outstanding city. We've done a lot of things that other places look to Richfield and say, well, it works in Richfield, we're going to take that idea and make it work in our city. So I'm thankful for all of those efforts that have gone on in the past. Richfield has been blessed that we've had an outstanding city staff. You can't probably find a better city staff than you can that is here in City Hall. My goal is that we continue to bring Richfield to the table in all of the partnerships that we have, school district, the Chamber of Commerce, and the regional places that we have, so that that'll all be to our benefit. So I would appreciate your support November 4th at the polls.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to everyone who's here today and everyone who's going to be watching on TV as well. I believe that our government can be a positive force for our state, for people, and for this city. That's something that I learned while interning for Senator Wellstone, and that belief in public service has continued with me in my work at the state legislature. Now I'm eager, I'm energized to bring my energy and experience to the city council and work hard to build a stronger future here in Richfield. As your council member, I will be responsive because everyone deserves a voice in their government. I will work hard to make Richfield an inviting place for new families and new businesses and be an advocate in and outside of the city. And as your council member, I'll focus on the future because I know that folks throughout the city care so much about seeing Richfield grow stronger, not just now, but a generation from now. It has been an honor to run for the Richfield City Council and to talk with many of you, and I would be grateful for your support and your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to all the candidates, and we had excuse me, many questions we didn't get to, so thank you to the audience members who supplied questions, and we are adjourned.